Platemark is a podcast about prints and the printmaking ecosystem. In every episode, we'll hear from people who occupy various roles in that ecosystem, be it artist, printer, publisher, curator, gallerist, auction person, administrator. I'm your host, Ann Schaefer. I work to promote prints and printmaking through this podcast, through organizing fine art print fairs and organizing exhibitions, albeit intermittently. The goal of the pod is to demystify the world of prints and printmaking, which can be technically challenging, and to demonstrate the range of opportunities to work in this charming corner of the art world. This is a show that takes you behind the scenes to expose the generous, collaborative, and creative people working to better the world one print at a time. Today's guest is Bob Townsend, who is a master printer in the true sense of the word, who had for many, many years a shop outside of Boston. And the reason I wanted to talk to him is that he was the only printer that Peter Milton trusted. Now, if you've been following along, you know True and I recently did an episode about Peter Milton's The Train from Munich, which Bob printed. So I wanted to talk to him because they're so intricate and they're so detailed, and I just thought, my God, if Peter trusted Bob to execute the plays, there must be something there. This is a real deep dive for you etching nerds, so buckle up. We get into it about plate wiping and trying to get tone to remain and not be too much and not be too little. And we also talk a lot about steel facing and the ins and outs of that process. And I think it's a good technical one for you guys who are in it deep up to your elbows. Okay, housekeeping. I identify as a cis-het white woman and I use the pronouns she, her. I record Platemark in Baltimore, Maryland, the land of the Piscataway Conoy people. Images Bob and I talk about are over in the show notes at platemarkpodcast.com. Over there you can also hit the support and donate button and help me keep the lights on. All right, let's get rolling. Bob, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for coming on Platemark today.
Thank you for inviting me. Absolutely.
Why don't you introduce yourself for everybody before I drag you into my first question?
My name is Bob Townsend. I've been running my studio for 55 years. It's been a very good ride. Had a good time. Worked with a lot of good artists. Finally slowing down and enjoying life a little bit more. So,
and where are you located?
I'm in Georgetown, Massachusetts. Originally, I started the shop, working in the shop in Boston at Impressions Workshop. That was back in 1968 while I was still going to art school. I was more or less trained as a commercial artist and found that I really didn't like it. A lot of the teachers we had there were in the business for about 40 years and they were getting booted out of their firms. So it kind of had a limited future, and I decided to take the 4-year program at New England School of Art, which included painting and printmaking. And Shirley Barella was the teacher of printmaking, and she worked in impressions in the letterpress area. She informed me and another fellow that they had an apprenticeship open in lithography and one in etching. And so I went down and applied for the etching job and got it. And I worked with a French printer by the name of Michel Durand for about 2 years. Then he left, and then I just kind of worked my way into running that end of the shop. Impressions in those days was mostly lithography. Edna Hibble was one of the big customers in the late 60s, early 70s. It was just slow going. Peter Milton came into the shop. His first time was around 1970, 71. He had just started or had finished the group of plates, the Jolly Corner. The French printers started proofing the job. He didn't really like the way they handled the plates. The steel plating, I think, confused them. They had a lot of trouble leaving the plate tone that he liked. So it went to New York to a printer. Then it came back, I think it was s3e93 in New York. It came to Impressions. And I had just gotten back out of the Army. While I was away, the shop hired another printer, and she more or less couldn't commit to the project. So it left. Then Carol Lewick was her name. She decided to leave. Then Steve Anders, who was my boss, asked if I would like to do the job, and I said, sure. So we went down to meet Peter at Yale, and I looked at the plates and took a couple of them back to the shop and figured out a way to leave the plate tone the way he wanted it. And then we started that job. It took about a year to do that job. 2 printers.
Well, there's a lot of plates in that one. So
Yeah.
we're talking about Peter Milton, right?
Right.
So I just want to be sure everybody who's listening is clear on who we're talking about, who I did a show with several years ago, almost 10 years ago. Good Lord. and yeah, I know. And Peter always said to True, and True is my friend who co-curated with me. He always said to us, Bob is the only one I trust with my plates. And I just wanted to talk to you and ask you about that relationship and, a little bit about what it was about you and your capabilities that made him feel secure with you.
I think a lot of it was the Trong etching press I had in the studio. I sold it a year ago, and it just moved out last month. That press just had the capabilities of printing better than any other press I've ever worked on. So that made my life a lot easier because a lot of Peter's work, the detail on it was it needed something really strong to actually get a good impression off the surface of the plate. And that press would do it. So that along with trying to figure out how to leave the plate tone on by rolling it and wiping back into it and doing a lot of false wiping, Peter and I happened to just click. I must say, I admired Peter's printing more than I liked my own printing because he had such he had such a nice way of doing, it's his hand doing the wiping instead of mine. So I appreciated much more the effects that he was able to get because he was a good printer as well as a good printmaker. So
yes.
it was, I actually learned a little bit watching him work, but I couldn't duplicate a lot of things. I had to develop my own sort of way of dealing with each plate. Each plate was different.
Well, so I was in my mind, I'm imagining that he's printing an impression or two to get to the BAT so that he could hand that off to you to say, this is what I'm after. But
Yes.
He didn't produce his entire editions by himself ever, did he?
He used to, yeah, absolutely. Before I started working with him, absolutely, yeah.
When we went to visit him in New Hampshire, he showed us, the inking turntable top stand that he had for inking.
Yeah, swirls it around, yeah.
Yeah, which was brilliant and all this stuff. And I thought, my gosh, he is actually, but I don't know how much he was doing in the later years. But anyway, but I was so curious. When I look at the prints that you printed for him, I imagine that they're pretty tightly wiped, which means for everybody who doesn't know that you basically clean all of the surface ink off so that it's very, the line and white. But you're saying there's a lot of nuance in the plate tone.
Yes, basically false wiping. One way around that was like Peter was able to accomplish that by using that turntable and actually turning the plate and using the tarlatan to move the ink around and leave false areas. I devised a way of rolling the plate tone on the surface. After I cleaned the plate off, I rolled the plate with a 10% gray tone over the entire plate.
What?
Then I went...
Wow. Wait, does that mean it's plate tone at that point? Yeah, tell me about it, because I've never heard anybody say that before.
So I'd clean the plate down completely. Then I'd take a large roller, obviously the size of the plate, and roll a tone on it. Now I could actually do a sepia tone, or I could do a gray tone. It just depends. Like some of the plates that I did for Peter, like the Second State of October piece, was rolled on it with a warm tone. So that was actually rolled. And it looks like a chine, but it's actually just a rolled tone. But in most of his pieces, I would roll a tone and then go back in and wipe the white areas out where he noted on the BAT that he wanted some sort of highlights. But it was always ended up almost being like a rag wipe. Like the entire end product of the plate was done with the tarlatan and moving the tarlatan around in a very similar way that Peter did on his turntable, but I did it after I rolled the tone on.
Oh my God. This is a new tool for me. I did not know that this was a thing. This is fascinating. You can just roll a 10% gray on there and...
Or 20%, whatever you want. Yeah, and go back and rework it.
Okay, this is new to me, everybody. Like, I don't know how I missed this piece. I'm so glad we talked, because now this is a whole new world and a whole new set of options, when you go printing. It's amazing.
One thing that Peter liked about the roll tone was it was very smooth. It had not very much texture. It was very flat, and not, it didn't really interfere with his drawing in any way, or the etched area on the plates. So it just created this nice smooth surface that he liked a lot. I think that's what he really tended to like. But during the plate making process, obviously he went through many stages developing first the sugar lift into the KPR, which is the Kodak photoresist. But he was losing, through the sugar lift process, he was losing about 20% of his drawing once he went through the sugar lift process. So that's why he went to the KPR, the Kodak photoresist. And that was even more difficult for him to work with, because he had to go back in and soften areas that were over etched or take them out completely, and then start his engraving process. So each plate, well, you all know, it took him almost a year to do. But during that process, he would come down and we'd proof and see where he was at, because there might have been something I got out of the plate that he wasn't able to get. So he was, didn't make as many corrections or whatever.
The show that Drew and I did was basically of the copper plates, and we had some of the prints with the plates, but it was mainly the plates, and Drew ended up polishing. But the thing that was so revealing about the polishing process was, he was really in there trying to make sure he got every last bit, so that it was gleaming and beautiful, which they are. But there were things that you saw in the plate that you didn't see in the print, and vice versa. Like, things were, it ended up being this weird perception thing where they weren't exact mirrors somehow, that there were these things that were just more apparent in one place or the other. It was fascinating.
Is that because of just the printing process disguised areas of the actual copper engraving, or you think?
Well, I think it was that you get swept away in the larger story in the print itself, and maybe because we were digging in and polishing very closely, that you would start focusing on the little Star of David that's in the window shade, and
Hotel
Paradise Cafe.
Every time you look at Peter's work, there's something new to look at. I agree with that 100%. Yes.
And that might be exactly what was happening. It's like, I never saw that before. Yeah. Well, so tell me, who else you printed for over time, and who did you really have an affinity with, do you think?
Everybody brought something different to the table. Peter obviously was very technical and required a whole different thought process. I worked a lot with Mike Mazur. Michael was a great guy to work with. We actually didn't talk too much while we were developing the work, because it was almost like the left hand knew what the right hand was doing. So there was a lot of just decision-making on my part as plates are getting developed, and he's working on plates and proofing. And I learned from him as much as he had been in doing monoprints and monotypes and etchings. He learned from me. So it was like this really joint effort of working together, which I enjoyed tremendously. I really miss the guy. He was just one of those people that was really friendly, fun to work with. We were just getting going on some new projects, some new bigger projects, which I'm sorry we never completed, but that's the way it goes. But he was very instrumental. Michael was commissioned by MIT to do the large Wake Me Day, Wake Me Night series of monotypes. So at the time, at Impressions, I was renting the equipment. Steve Anders had shut down his end of the operation, and Paul McGuire bought out the litho end, and I bought out the etching end. But we rented all the equipment and stayed in a physical space. So Michael came along with this project, and the end print was 72 inches by 24 feet.
What?
It's a huge print. So in order to accommodate that, I had to enlarge the press bed, but I didn't own the press. So I finally confronted Steve Anders and asked him to sell me the press so I could enlarge the press bed up to 100 inches. He agreed, and I got that done, and then Michael came in and started the project. So it took about 2 months. He did some smaller studies right before he came in, but I look back at it, I don't know how we did it. I just don't know how we did it. But
That's my next question. How'd you do it?
well, we found during the project that the ghost impression that was being left over from the key impression, let's say the Wakeby Day part, we would use that for the night version and just continue to work over the plate. The problem was we were working like for 8 hours, and we'd leave the plates overnight and the ink would dry and we had to wash off the plates and start all over again. So we decided to work 14, 15 hours straight and do a day version and do a night version. So we did probably around 15, 20 sets. And then he chose the best sets to put in the MIT dorm where it went. So we'd work for a day, take a day off, work for a day, take a day off. The space I had in Boston was very small. And I just look at some of the pictures, and I go, I don't know how I did it. But we did it. But Joan Snyder is another artist
Cool.
I've really enjoyed working with. I met her down at the Fine Arts Work Center when Michael Mazur started the New Provincetown print project. And he asked me if I would come down for the summer and commit myself to come down for a few years. And I said, sure. When we first started the project, I brought down one of my smaller presses. The work center at the time still had dirt floors. So we worked in the old lumber mill part with the dirt floors. And then they started to build out the work center. And finally, I got into a smaller print room. It was a little bit easier to work with. So I was down there for, I think, 5 years. Worked with 20 different artists, and Joan was one of them. And she came back and worked up here a few times. I just got finished doing a plate for her right during COVID, so she wouldn't come here. So it was I call it my Zoom print with Joan. So it was everything was back and forth, just proofing, plate making. So it's a mixed bag. I think it was woodcut, silkscreen, gravure. The gravure process gets people going very, very quickly. Come into the shop and they'll have a plate made, maybe 1 or 2 plates made already. And they're already running in place and not trying to figure out how to do things.
So in your workshop, were you doing collaborative printing as the publisher, or were you mostly facilitating contract printing projects?
Well, I've been mostly a contract printer. So
yeah.
That's the difference between me and, let's say, Peter Pettengill and Jim Stroud. They do a lot of publishing. I just never really, what limited publishing I did, and I didn't make any money on it. So
yes, as my husband likes to say, how do you make a small fortune in print publishing? You start with a large fortune.
But I had an open door. Anybody who came in, I was willing to print for. It didn't matter to me. I wasn't judgmental of their work. I just gave them the best product I could give them. And out of that, I think you get a little bit of everybody's work is when I'm developing something with somebody. There's a little bit of everybody in doing a print for one person. Well, all the knowledge that has been accumulated by doing all these projects gets put into the development of the print. In a very small way, but overall, all the knowledge is used. So
I'm always curious if printers offer up, not critique, but like conversation that might say, have you thought of this? Or maybe don't do that. Did that ever happen?
Only if I'm asked. I think that's
how often does that happen?
That's not very often. No, no. You don't go down that road. No. There are subtle suggestions, but I can't. Yeah. I can only do so much. Each artist has their limitations, and you have to recognize what that limitation is, and just accept that and do the best you can for them.
Sure.
So I always felt that a lot of people bring their work in here because it's they can't figure out how to do it, so they bring it to me to figure out how to do it and get a better result. And it usually works pretty well.
Well, so what are they having trouble doing?
Just getting a good print a lot of the time.
Wait, but if they're printmakers.
Printing's actually, well, so many times, like a couple of friends of mine come in. They're young and they just got into doing some printmaking, graduated, and they showed me some of their work. And I look at it and I go, well, there's a better way to present this. You're presenting it and it's not a good look. There's a better way to wipe it. You're not wiping the plate properly. Just little things. So they come and they spend a day with me. And they come back in a month and spend another day. And then they finally get it. And then they start sending me JPEGs of their work. And I say, yeah, you finally understand what I was talking about.
What's your best tip, or maybe you're not willing to share because you have the magic sauce apparently, but what's your best tip on wiping?
It's a hard question to answer because every surface, every print is a different problem. A lot of it is understanding when you're over wiping or under wiping, or just a simple thing about just clean your edges, file your edges and clean your edges. Present the print the best way you can present the print. So, but a lot of people don't recognize when it's time to stop. Well, they stop too early. So that's part of it. It's just knowing the surface of the plate and learning the way you work is going to present a certain effect. Each artist is different, obviously, and you've got to know when to stop on either wiping the plate or whatever else you're doing to it, adding material to it or stopping.
Are you a believer in palm wiping, or what's your finish wipe?
Hand and tarlatan.
Yeah. Hand and tarlatan, then hand.
Yep, a lot of taffeta.
What's the secret to the hand wipe? Like, what does it do that other things don't do?
Well, it gets you to a point where you have enough ink removed from the surface of the plate to take the next step in whatever direction you want to go. So it's a cleaning process, basically.
Yeah.
Of the surface of the plate.
Huh.
There's a heavy. I mean, you can be heavy-handed with your hand, or you can be light-handed. A lot of it has to do with how much whiting you use. People chalk up too much and go at it, and it creates this over-wiped, dry look. I don't use a hot plate. I use oil more than the hot plate to reduce the.
Oh. Wait, hold on. Okay, help me understand the difference there.
All right, so a hot plate makes the etching ink more viscous while you're inking and easier to remove. I choose to add linseed oil, boiled linseed oil or plate oil, and use that as a vehicle to loosen the ink and make it easier to remove. So
the difference really is just in temperature, but does it affect the ease?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's more of a tendency to overwipe when you use heat.
Okay. Huh.
And using heat with a rolled tone never really worked. Keeping the plate cooler and using the rolled tone allowed me a little bit more time and finesse to work the surface.
Okay.
Not overwipe it.
Huh. That was the extra secret sauce you didn't know before. But so I'm fascinated with this rolled thing. But with I feel like people somehow think that I don't know what I'm talking about because I'm not an artist, or a printer. Are people reluctant to add the oil because they think it will thin and dilute the tone?
I think there's more of an issue with the oil may have a tendency over time to saturate into the paper and discolor the paper.
There are lots of tricks, Bob.
It's like the Dine prints, the Temple of Flora. That was a huge project. And they were all dry points and in Dremel tools. To this day, I mean, I used a lot of oil in that ink. It was Charbonnel ink we used. And to this day, I've looked at the back of the prints, and there's some very heavy deposits of ink on the prints. And the backs are fine. There's no bleed of oil. So a lot of it is if you use too much oil, yes, it's a problem. Again, it's a learning process. And but it does take time for that oil to bleed through. So I've always been careful how much I use. There's a sense you have with the palette and the ink as you're mixing the oil in when it's the right viscosity. And again, It's a learning process.
When I was working at the Baltimore Museum, we had a Temple of the Flora, Dine's book, which was brought out, I think, for almost every class I ever taught. It's a gorgeous book, and the dry point, I don't know how you got it to last over the course of the however many you did, but and I never noticed the oil on the back at all. So yeah, it seems like you did the right thing. You
still plated those plates every day.
Oh my gosh.
Because the steel would wear off on the tips of the dry point. So at the end of the day, you could look at it under a linen tester, and you could see a little bit of copper showing through it. So I threw it in a steel plating tank, did a 2-minute flashing, and then we printed the next day. Every day we were printing and doing that. So that allowed the prints to keep their integrity throughout the whole process.
Oh my God. I am learning so much from you. Jesus. Wait, so you, on the daily, I mean, how many would you get printed in a day? And
Probably,
have to be
the editions were 170, 150, somewhere around there.
Yikes.
So we were printing maybe 25 to 30. But we would stop if we saw any. I told the printers who were helping me, I said, just look at the plates at noontime when we break for lunch. If there's any issue, just put it aside and do another plate, and I'll get it steel plated.
Why would the steel facing, it's just wearing off because it's so microscopically thin?
The tips of the burr that were created are the most fragile parts. So they would get the most abuse from the tarlatan or from your hand.
Sure.
So the wear just would go, we just take that tip off. The tip of the steel would come off those points. And that's what you watch for.
But that's incredible that the burr would hold up to be steel faced once again.
Another 20 prints, yeah.
Oh my God, that's incredible. I didn't know you could do that.
I didn't either. I tried it.
Gosh, what else do I need to ask you about that I don't even know I need to ask you? Holy cow, you've answered so many questions I've always had. That's amazing.
I knew we had to do something because I didn't strip the plates and reface them, which would have been more dangerous to do that like multiple times. I just said, screw it. I'm just going to run it through the steel plating tank and just put another day's printing on the plate. And it worked. So
there's no trouble with building up the layers of steel?
I was putting on a thin enough layer so that by adding to it each day, it didn't affect anything at all. Absolutely nothing.
Okay. Question number 25,000. How do you control how thick or how much steel is going on? How does that work?
All done by a rectifier, and the current you run through the solution.
Whoa. I'm sorry.
It's simple to me, it's because I do it.
I know. Well, this is the beauty of being a curator, asking the questions, because you can mask your lack of knowledge by playing dumb for the entire general audience. You're like, but I didn't know that. So, wow, that's amazing. I didn't know you could do that. Oh my God, my brain is going a mile a minute here.
It just seemed like the most logical. I mean, I had done it before, but it was more or less on some other work we had done. They weren't dry points, so it was a little bit more of a challenge to make sure the plates would still maintain the integrity of what the BAT looked like from the beginning.
Right.
There's not much evidence of change throughout the edition.
Well, right. That's why people hire you, because you achieve that incredible sameness across the edition. It's really impressive.
It's a nice project. Nice one. Working with Arian Press was always fun.
Yeah, it was Arian, right? Yeah.
Yeah. He had a lot of good people we worked with. Yeah.
Yeah. No, they made good things. We, on a trip with the Print Council of America, which is for people who don't know, is the professional organization for print museum curators and conservators and scholars. And we were in San Francisco, and we got to go to Arian while Andrew was still there. And he gave us a lead type demo. And I mean, it was fascinating. It was so cool.
Because they made their own type. Yeah. They
made their own type. It was amazing. One of probably 2 in the country or something. I was astonished by it. Yeah, that was so cool. Can I ask you about your own background? Are you an artist?
Horrible at it.
Okay. Yeah. How did you even discover that printing was a thing, that was a possible career path?
Well, again, taking that 4th year at New England School of Art, I did it for 2 reasons. I did it to stay out of the Army for 1 more year at the time, because the Vietnam War was in full blossom back then, and also I didn't want to go into commercial art. I had a part-time job working at an engineering firm, doing their annual reports and all that stuff, and out on the road doing some of their books on their sites, on their projects, and I just didn't want to do it. was good pay. It would have been a good pay. And I actually gave the name of the firm to a fellow who was in my class with me. And I said, they're looking for a replacement because I'm leaving. He went down and got the job, and I think he's still there. So that
Oh
was,
my gosh.
I enjoyed the printmaking. Shirley was a great teacher. We did a couple of visits to the shop, and I said, gee, I'd really like to do this. And then when the job opens up, I said, okay. So I was married at the time, thank God, because I started as an apprentice making the minimum wage, which was probably around $3 an hour. My wife at the time worked for the Department of the Navy as a legal secretary, so she was making some good money. So I didn't really worry too much about things.
That was really an apprentice kind of a thing?
Yeah, working for Michel Durand, all I did was basically mix ink and dry prints. And he would show me how to do some projects and started giving me things to do. He didn't speak a word of English. That was a big problem.
Oh boy.
So I learned a lot of French swears while I was working with him. Because I think he wanted to fire me a few times. And Steve Anders said, no, we'll just let's keep going. So I only worked with him for about 2 years, but he showed me an awful lot. When I started Impressions, I thought I knew a lot, but boy, it's like everything else in life, you go, wow, there's just so much more to this. And I can remember looking at a print and I'm going, why is everybody signing the prints BAT? I didn't know what the BAT standard for. I said, everybody's calling the prints a bat. I didn't know what it stood for. So that was my first sort of, wow, okay, that's what it is. It's good to pull, whatever. So,
right. Yeah. So for people who haven't dived too deep into the nerddom of printmaking, BAT is the proof that is checked off as the one you're supposed to match as you do the addition. And BAT stands for bon à tirer, which is French for good to pull, good to print, excuse me. Yeah. Sorry. I have to explain that for people.
That's all right. I missed a few points there quickly. I just brush over things. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Well, it's hard. I think I've come to agree that my audience is basically all of the printmakers, but I think there are still people who are listening, like my brother, who's not an artist. So every now and again, I'm like, well, maybe I should explain that for my brother.
Yeah, I know. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So have you ever fired an artist?
What do you mean? They would fire me before I would
Just
fire
sort of
them.
come to an agreement that you're not the right person for the job and said, go away.
No, I think it usually becomes, there's been a couple, I'm not successful in everything I do, that's for sure. And there are certainly some regrets that I wish I had done things a little bit differently. I think both the artist and myself realize we get to a point where I can't help you. And some of it is just their unwillingness to make the job easier to do or do it the right way, instead of pushing it in a direction that is almost impossible to do. And when I get to that point, that's when I kind of wash my hands, say, I can't do this. So to save you money, let's just stop here. You kind of realize that very quickly. The only problems I've had occasionally are because the artist didn't want to take the time to do it the right way. And that's when I just say, no, I can't do it that way. So that's the end of it. And so,
but is there always a right? I mean, I'm sure there's a most expeditious, reasonable way, but aren't we supposed to encourage experimentation?
I don't know. You get put in a spot where they're asking you to do something it's going to fail, and I just refuse to go down that road. It'd be a failure, So I just cut the cord to stop that from happening.
Right.
Because all it takes is like one mistake, and then it takes like 20 good jobs to make up for that one mistake that you should have stopped.
Gotcha.
So I'm very careful about that.
Okay, well, that's fair. Do you ever print in color?
Michael Mazur, all of his work is color. Donald Sultan, a little bit of color work on his, obviously.
Okay.
Andrew Stevovich, a lot of his work was all color. Obviously, Peter was colorblind, so he didn't do too much in color.
No.
Which I found amazing when he told me that. But,
I know. He did love telling people that.
The only thing I don't think I would be good at is viscosity printing. That's probably my biggest weakness. I never liked doing it, and I didn't encourage myself to do it or anybody else to do it, so I just stayed away from it.
Okay,
So,
but let's all recall your earlier statement about rolling tone across the surface.
yeah, but that's not multiple levels of etched areas, like using a soft roller and a hard roller. The true viscosity printmaking is done. So,
Sure. You had like one toe in it, though, I think.
yeah, but something I could control. That's all. That's the
Oh,
difference. You tend to stay away from things you don't like or you don't think you'd be good at. So that's one
yeah.
area I stayed away from.
You probably don't know this about me, but hater is one of my special research areas and interests. Yeah, so I had to dive pretty deep in on the viscosity thing,
I know.
and it was very instructive. Like, I didn't really know anything about it before I started looking at him and his work. And True and I sort of figured it out on our own because he'd never been trained in that either. But it was really fascinating. I was like, why is this working? This shouldn't be working.
Yeah, it's very technical because it does come down to obviously the different amounts of reducer you put in the ink
Right.
and the softness of the roller. It's almost like a pain in the ass. I looked at it in that respect.
I think it is, it's a little bit improvisational, but not improvisational. It's kind of a strange corner of intaglio
Not too
printing,
many
isn't it?
people did it either.
Yeah.
It's the discipline was not something that was well used by a lot of people. So
Right. So you're still taking jobs or are you mostly retired?
mostly retired right now. It was
Yeah.
something, once the big press got sold, I was glad to see it go. It was very difficult to let it go. I've had it for 50 years. And I have another press here that is basically the same age as that, early 1900s, big old cast iron. It's not a 100-inch press, but it's a 72 by 42-inch press. So it's still a big press. I don't know. It just, you kind of get to a point where I don't know why I'm at this point. Maybe because of the health issues I have right now. There's not a lot of, you certainly can't put in a 6-hour day, 7-hour day anymore. So it's kind of, I pick things I like to do. And right now I like getting outside, working outside, or whatever jobs that come in. I help Don Gorvet, a friend of mine who does reduction woodcut. So I help him out quite a bit. Go down to his shop in Gloucester and work with him.
You're helping him print?
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
Plus,
wow.
I got a lot of his blocks here,
Oh, you do?
but they're black and
I like,
white. So most of the
oh, okay.
time, if I'm helping him out down in Gloucester, he's in the middle of starting the reduction process, starting the printing. So he tends to do editions of 25, and usually, ask me to come in and start helping him. I'm always doing the 10 to 12 colors. It's unbelievable. Again, it's a discipline that not many people do, the reduction process.
Yeah.
So it's fun to watch him work.
Yeah. 12 stages or colors that sounds like a lot.
Plus, I love his studio. It's in an old marina, and I love boats. So
Oh,
I love
cool.
looking out the window at the boats, which I don't have. I used to have a boat. I don't have anymore. But Don's a good friend. Good friend.
He seems like he makes a lot of work. It seems rapidly, but maybe I'm just,
Yeah, he does. Yeah, but
yeah.
each image takes up to 2 months to do. So
Okay.
I don't know how he does. He's got a gallery in Portsmouth. He's one of the only few people I know that has a gallery where he sells his work, plus the shop in Gloucester, and he lives down in Gloucester on the waterfront, one of the condos.
Nice.
How he does it, I don't know, but he does it.
Yeah. In the gallery, is he selling the work of other artists also?
He has some prints of mine. Yeah, he has. There's a few artists I don't know of that come in that he handles. Sid Hurwitz was the one I'm trying to think of. I don't know if you know Sid. Yeah, okay.
I do.
Sid
Yeah.
has his work there. Yeah,
Okay.
a few.
That makes
But
that makes
Don's
sense.
very protective of his space, and everything that he has outside of his is in bins. It's not on the wall. People have to dig for it to see it. So
Nice. You got to work for it.
yeah.
When you enter into a working relationship to accomplish an edition, is there a contract that says, I won't sell my printer's proofs until the entire edition is done? Or is it just sort of like a handshake deal?
It's a word of mouth understanding.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that's something that listeners may not know, which is that you guys, the printers, always get an impression, or sometimes two, I think,
Or
of
three or
whatever
four.
you're or three of whatever you're printing for people, so that you end up with this massive collection of really wonderful things. And then what happens, right? So I've talked to a bunch of printers, some of whom have placed the majority of their collection with their alma mater, or has been able to, sell it through an auction or something. But it can end up being a lot of work, and it's a big responsibility. What do you do with it all, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm going through that now. So
Right.
in some ways, my two older boys live in South Carolina. They have pretty good sized houses. Brian has always understood the better part of my collection, and he wanted to put some works in his house. So I said, okay, come up and choose what you want. We got to frame it, and just when I croak, it just has to go in, and you guys have to figure out what to do with it. So it takes it out of it does two things: the tax exposure. It eliminates part of that because it's not here. So that anybody going through the print drawers or whatever, they wouldn't find some of the higher end work. It's in Brian's house and Jason's house.
Right. Right.
So there's still a lot of work here, but selling it is a whole different story. So it's hard to find that market.
Well, it's hard to find, the market, but also a avenue to do it through, because as a print person, I have things that I should probably be deaccessioning now because I keep acquiring. Bad news. But how, where, who's gonna, how do you do it? So it is
everything I've been successful is all word of mouth. It's person sees something, and then like one person knew Mike Mazur, and he used to sing with him in a choir, and so he got to know Michael's work. So he came up 2 weeks ago. He first emailed me, and then he and his wife came up. They wanted to look at what I had. I gave him a list of prints I had, and there was one print I didn't give him on the list, and he came up, and I said, well, I'll show him this print. I didn't want to sell it, but it happened to be the print he wanted. I knew he'd want it. So he goes, oh, I didn't know you had this. I said, no, I never have posted it on my Facebook page. So he goes, all right, we're interested in that. So they bought 2 prints. And they said, look, we've got to. So as I'm going through the print drawers, I was showing them everything. And they brought another fellow with them. And they're all taking pictures. And he said, I've got some friends of mine I'm going to send these to. And he said, they'll probably get in touch with you. So again, it takes time, but it's all word of mouth. This is mostly the way it's happening.
Right.
So slow but sure. But there's a whole bunch because I was an open shop for so many years, I told my kids, look, there's going to be, I hate to put things this way, there's 3 different levels of print drawers I have. The top, the middle, and the bottom. And I said, you have to understand the value of each one of those levels. No disrespect to the artist. You may like something on the bottom level.
Yeah.
But be careful on the top level, because those are the ones that have a little bit more pricey. So,
right.
Because they're concerned.
This one could put your kids through school.
They don't know what to do with the work. That's the big reason I was glad to sell the big press, because the kids would not know what to do with it. Getting that thing out of here was a bear, but it's out.
Did Perry come and get it out for you?
No, we 3 of us moved it. 10,000 pounds.
Oh my God!
Moved it out the side of my shop. I think there's a picture of it in the print journal.
There's a picture on your Facebook page too. But who? So can I ask you who bought it?
The fellow's name is Jack Kraft. He's an artist from Austin, Texas area. He's also a cattle rancher. And he came up a year ago and decided he wanted to buy it. He put a deposit on it. And I said, all right, let me do some research on riggers. And riggers got, it was $12,000 just to get it out of here to the Woburn facility where they'd store it. And then another $12,000 to take it to Austin, Texas. So he said, he goes, nope, I'm not going to do that. He said, I'll build a rig myself. So he built a trailer himself. And he and a blacksmith friend of his drove up and backed it down the side of the house. And there's an old railroad bed next to the house, and it's down about 3 feet. And the trailer is about the same height off the ground. So it was perfect just to build a ramp up to the The only thing I had to be careful about was the electric company has electric wires going down. And because it's an old railroad bed, it's rails to trails now. So it's a bike path. So I had to get
Oh,
permission from the town to put the trailer there. And I had to get permission from National Grid to put the trailer there. There's no
oh my
problem with the
gosh.
town. There's no problem with the town. National Grid never got back to me. So I just
Oh,
did it. Last time I
yikes.
moved the press out, I opened up a studio up in Amesbury, Mass, in this big old loft, beautiful 1,800 square feet. And I moved the press out, moved all the equipment out. And so I contacted National Grid and said I would be doing this. And they never got back to me. So the day the riggers came, they sent a helicopter out and hovered over the building for an hour. They were concerned we were going to use a hoist and interfere with the wires. And we didn't do that. We just put it on these industrial jacks and pushed it out.
Oh my
So
gosh.
this time they didn't even bother to come out. So whatever.
Wow. That is a story. Oh my God. Well, and I'm still
Crazy.
back on $24,000 to move it to Texas.
Is that crazy? Yeah.
That's amazing.
It only cost me $3,000 back in 2000 to move it from
Oh,
here
right.
up to Amesbury. 15 miles away, but nevertheless, it's
Yeah, and you don't have to tell us how much Jack paid for it, but I wonder if it was near to that cost of getting it there. Oh my God, that's
But,
incredible.
the press is worth a lot more to me. But
Sure.
it was time. You just move
Yeah.
on. But,
Yeah, but if it was the press that gave you the best results, oh, that must have hurt to give it
yeah,
away. Oh,
it did. But this press I have here now it's just as good.
oh,
Just
okay.
as good. That's why I bought it. This press used to be in New York at Anderson Lamb. You ever hear of them?
No, who's
In
that?
Brooklyn, New York.
Uh-uh.
They had an incredible collection of older plates. Richard Rummel did college views. He used to go up in a hot air balloon and go to all the major college campuses and do a watercolor. And they come back to Anderson Lamb, do it on glass, and then they made the photogravures from them.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I've got a picture of this press in Anderson Lamb in 1962
Whoa.
that I came across. And we actually went down there in the late 60s, early 70s, because they had a steel plating operation. And we wanted to see how they did it, which we ended up buying a rectifier. They had all these light bulbs on the wall, and they created the resistance, maybe 100 light bulbs. And the circuit went down into the steel plating tank. And depending on the resistance they wanted, they would turn on all these light bulbs or shut them off.
Oh my
That was the
God.
current. That was the current that went into the tank. So it was like this incredible glare of lights while they were doing this steel plating.
That'd be a great scene for a movie somehow.
But this press was in the corner there. And then Anderson Lamb went out of business, and Paul Victoria's prints bought half the collection, and Tony Cardinelli bought the other half. And I started printing for Paul Victoria, so I got all those plates to print here for years. And then Tony Cardinelli had this press, and I bought the press when he went out of business. I went down and bought 3 presses from him. Unfortunately, the riggers, when they were bringing the presses up, they were coming through Connecticut, and the trailer got in the soft shoulder, and the press weighs around 5,000 pounds. So it started to bounce, and the legs gave way, and it went off the trailer. So when they came here, they had a tarp over the press. And I'm looking at the riggers. I'm going, what the hell? What's going on here? The guy just looked at me and he pulled the tarp off. And I go, this is the press I went down to buy. I just packed up the other 2 because they were there and I wanted them too. And so I go, oh my God. I mean, it's a cast iron press, so it's hard to fix.
Right.
So, but I got the insurance settlement on it. And I found this guy next town over who agreed to put the thing back together. So he got the whole cast iron cherry red and put metal plates on the legs that broke. And it's strong. It's a stronger press now because of that. But it took a while to get that done, about a year.
Oh my gosh.
But it was heartbreaking seeing that press.
Oh my
The
God.
legs. Plus, it had this great big wheel that just got completely destroyed. I couldn't rebuild that.
Oh
But
my
I
goodness.
put a motor on it anyway, so it didn't really matter.
Right. Oh my God. Is it hard to convert manual to motor and vice versa? Is it
I've always worked with motorized presses, so I probably would have gotten out of this business a long time ago if I didn't have motorized presses.
Right.
I think Peter Miltons had shoulder surgery twice, I think,
Yeah.
because of that.
I wonder about the screen printing guys with the squeegees, I mean, I don't know. Anyway, I suppose if you are doing it, you probably get one of those arms that does it for you,
Yeah.
Yeah. There's always a way around it, I guess. All right. Well, is there stuff coming up that you want to share with us, or are you happy in your helping Don at the shop kind of a situation?
Well, that's about all I'm doing.
Yeah. You deserve it.
Yeah, I kind of look at it that way too. I mean, I still want to print a little bit. What I've found is that the longer I'm away from this, the harder it is to get back into it. I'll stand in front of a plate and go, geez, this used to be a lot easier. And, I have to think a little bit more about how to go about things. I used to get a kick out of Peter Milton because he used to, at certain points, he would actually sell out his complete editions. And he got to a point where he'd only print half of them. And then he'd come back to me 5 years later and say, can we finish out that edition? And going, Peter, it's going to take me a week to figure out what the heck I did on this plate just to print this again. And I wasn't successful on a lot of them. I said, I can't do this. Plus, he was a little reluctant to pay for another week of getting the plate running again.
Right.
So I spent a couple of days. If I couldn't get it going in a couple of days, we just would put it aside. But I think one thing that happened to him that benefited his work a great deal, I finally convinced him to take the Mylar drawings that he did and make the plates using the gravure process.
That was your idea?
Yeah. So he decided, he was reluctant to do it for a while, but I said, look, it'll give you more of a continuous tone effect because it reads the density of your dot that you create. So he did it, and it saved him probably about 2 months' work on the plates. There was less engraving that he had to do. Even his work in Photoshop that he was doing, in terms of some of the output and collaging he was doing in Photoshop, the gravure process couldn't read the information, and I couldn't make a plate, so he went to John Goodman, because John works basically with photographers, and John's very good at what he does. I would basically just take the gravure process, and whatever I get out of it, I'd use it. And anyway, I wasn't really at that looking to get the perfect remedy out of it. But John had a problem making the plates too, and after that, that's when Peter basically went into just doing all the work in Photoshop. After that.
Oh, and doing the digital outputs.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because you guys couldn't get what he was doing in photo. Oh my gosh.
Got so anal in terms of the detail.
Yeah.
And he was almost tempted to go back and loosen up a little bit, but he never did. He just kept working. Because they kept improving the Photoshop process and kept giving him more and more ability to define things.
Right.
So some of them, they're beautiful drawings, but it's just, I was sad to see him go that direction.
I know. Well, I was too. And, he would sort of talk about it as though it was just, the next part of the evolution of image making or something. And I always lamented.
I didn't agree with that.
Exactly. I mean, it is a lot of work. Obviously, he puts a tremendous amount of work into it, but I still want to see your hand, Bob, your hand on the plate when, you're inking it. Like, I don't know. If you're a printmaker, make prints, man.
He was good at it.
Yeah.
But he was struggling with his site still. Even when I was working with him in the later days, he still was struggling with his site on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think he's still doing a little bit, but certainly not what he was when he was, a younger man. So
having the large press was Jim Dine was a visiting artist at Harvard, and I knew a couple of people that worked there, and I said, come on over and meet him. So once I met him, I said, why don't you come to the shop? So he came over, looked at the press, and said, okay, I can give you some work. So there was, first print I did for him was Storm, it was Sea of Aquatent or something. It's a fairly large dry point of a pine tree. And then Pace Editions came up, I forget the fellow's name.
Well, there's Dick.
Yeah, that was Dick, yeah. Is he still there?
Yep.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, Dick Solomon. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they dropped off another group of prints, and then when I was working down at the graphic studio at the University of South Florida, there was another job that I did down there with them. So then it got to a point where I made a commitment to Mike Mazur to do as much work I could do for him the last 2 years of his life. And Jim called in the middle of one of the projects and had something for me to do. And I said, I can't do it now. And he didn't like that. So that was the last time I worked with him.
Jim is an interesting cat.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's
very likable, but I feel like I need 3 of me to actually work with him.
Yeah, exactly.
It's unbelievable. He's so good at what he does. It's amazing.
I know. When you were at Graphic Studio, were you working on a side view in Florida, the big skull?
No, that was done a little bit after I left. Deli Sacciolato came in. I was there as an interim printer there. They wanted Deli Sacciolato. He was closing down his shop in New York, and I was sort of the buffer in between them getting him down there. Just fine. It was so hot. No, thank you. And we worked in an old planetarium, so there was no air conditioning. We just opened up the roof, let the cool air come in at night, and then closed the roof in the morning. It was in the middle of a golf course. Golf balls were getting hit in all the time when the roof was open. So it's all concrete, so you ducked.
Oh my God.
Crazy place.
That does sound nuts. Wow. I didn't know that about them.
Robert Gordy down there, he had never done any etchings. He mostly did monoprints, monotypes. So he did his first etching. And then he had AIDS at the time. I didn't know that. He died a couple of years later. He came up and worked here for a few months doing some projects. I always liked his work. But he had a really hard time working on the copper. He didn't like the metallic feeling of burnishing the plates and scraping the plates. So he'd draw on the plates with a magic marker, and I'd go in and do all the design work that he wanted done.
Oh, interesting. I never thought about it that way. Fascinating. That's amazing. It makes total sense that somebody could draw with a Sharpie and hand it over and you could, get the marks into the plate. But boy. Another thing I've learned from you, Bob.
Well, you do what you have to do,
Exactly.
Somebody's paying you to do it. If someone, I was getting paid, so you do what you have to do. So
right, exactly.
Wasn't my nickel. Arakawa was there. He was enjoyable. Robert Rauschenberg ended up doing some lithos when he was there. So it was sort of interesting because I was supposed to be there when artists were there to do work. And at the same time, we were doing the Temple of Flora back here. Mm-hmm. So I was flying back and forth because I had 2 printers here. And I wanted to make sure the plates weren't breaking down, and because this other fellow was doing a little bit of steel plating as well. So I went down. They said, Rauschenberg coming in. So I went down. So about 20 people come in ahead of him. And they get everything all set up for him. And then he comes, and I'm, waiting for him to come over to the etching side, and he just never came over. So I said, okay, I'm going home. So I flew home.
Oh, gosh.
It was fun, but it was hot. It was just so hot down there. Never forget getting off the plane when I went down there to apply for the job. It was like August. And as soon as they opened the door to that plane, I went, whoa, this is unbelievable.
Spoken like a true New Englander.
But it was a good time. I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, it seems like you've worked with a whole raft of really interesting artists, and you are known in the business for your deft touch. And what more could you want?
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I think the only regret I have is I think I would have done better if I went to New York years ago.
Whoa, okay.
Except the press up in New York.
You would have been miserable in New York, Bob.
I know it. Well, we just had to start a family, so I said no, I don't do that because we probably have to live in Connecticut just to afford to be able to go down there and work. Yeah, but I was ready for that type of thing. So.
Okay. Is there one project that you remember that was the most fun or the most challenging?
Milton.
No.
All his work. It's just a mindset you have to put yourself in to prepare yourself to do his work. Because
Right.
Peter's here while you're proofing. He's watching everything I do. And I do things a lot different than the way he does it. So a lot of times he would look at me like, what did you do that for? Like just a simple thing like putting a plate tone on the edge. I'd roll it on. Just roll it. Get it nice and even. And he was able to wipe it on and get it nice and even. That's what I say. The difference about the way he printed and the way I printed, some things that he did, I really looked at it and go, I couldn't do that the way he did it.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I'm fascinated by that new trick in my back pocket. That's amazing. Head is exploding. Oh my gosh. Well, Bob, I feel like we have covered a lot of territory, and I just want to thank you for coming on the show, because I've wanted to talk to you since the moment I started the podcast, and it's taken us this long to get us together. So I'm grateful you could do it.
Yeah, well, it's been, it's still having a few difficulties here and there, but I wanted to do before I forgot about everything.
Oh, have you started writing any of this down? Maybe you should write a book.
I have ever since I started printing, I have journals, notebooks that go back 50 years. So I can go back 50 years and look at a project in the notebook. They're all upstairs. My kids will probably just trash it, just
No,
trash it.
no, don't leave. Oh my God, Bob. So what you need to do is you need to pack those puppies up and send them to the Archives of American Art at the Smithsonian.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yes. I think people will be interested because it's hard to find, good, thorough notes by print. Like that would be a treasure trove for people.
Pretty detailed, a lot of the stuff.
I bet.
Not everything, obviously. Most of it's just what I did for the day, and how, at the end of the week, I go through it and bill for the jobs that were being done at the time. Right. But getting into like Peter's work or like Michael's work or Joan's work, there was stages of what I had to do. Like this last print of Joan's, it took me a year to do. It's called Black Lake Redux. It's a beautiful print. It's something that I'm very proud of. It has more of my hand in it than I'd like, and that's because of COVID. But Joan trusted me enough to get this thing done, and it's a beautiful print. Lots of good memories. I'd like to do more.
Please don't throw those journals away for posterity. And there's a lot of print shops that take, well, probably not so much anymore, but like Hayter, for instance, at Atelier 17, terrible at keeping records on who was there, what they, and so some of us are trying to piece it all back together now, 100 years later, and it's hard to do. Yeah. So please don't throw those journals away.
I won't. Can I tell you two more stories?
Yes, please.
2 more stories? Okay.
Yeah.
So I did 2 projects, one for the Mass Historical Society and one for the Mass Archives. The Mass Historical Society was printing Paul Revere's Boston Massacre. And this fellow, Julian Taverner, who ran Haley and Steel on Newbury Street, was distributing the prints. So I got a call from the Boston Herald. They wanted to come out and take some photographs of the project. And so I went through Mass Historical Society. They said, fine. And Haley and Steel said, fine, we need the advertising to sell the prints. So this guy comes out, takes some photographs. And when he was taking the pictures, I was holding the plate, and he happened to catch me at a particular time where it looked like I was dropping the plate. So the next morning, I go into the coffee shop, and the people are looking at me, and they're going, Bob, what have you done? I was on the front page of the Boston Herald that I was destroying American history. That was because the Herald had a issue with William Galvin, who was the Secretary of State, and he was running for re-election, and he approved the project. So for the whole week, I was on the first page, second page, third page, and then the fifth page. They found different experts, like I was stripping the plate. I had it steel plated. So they found some guy that says I was destroying the surface using acid. No. The other one with Mass Historical was at the end of World War II. The British government donated nautical charts that were done by this fellow DeBars. there was these full charts, big charts that the British used to navigate the east coast of the United States in 1775, 1776. And they remained in the basement of the Mass Historical Society for 40 years, 45 years, maybe longer. Map collectors knew they were there, so they asked me to come in and look at the plates. So I bring 2 plates out at a time. They insured like for $1 million a piece. So I went through 40 plates. Unfortunately, 20 of the plates, they were packed in cardboard, and the corrugated cardboard etched into the plate, the copper plates, and they were not usable.
Oh, no.
So the bottom line, what happened here, Julian Taverner had a line of credit with the banks, and he overextended himself because he was competing with Sotheby's and Christie's in New York at all the states that had been closing down and selling prints and paintings. So a friend of mine had a piece of work there, and Julian would have a weekend auction. And he said, he hasn't put up my piece yet. I haven't seen my piece. So he kept calling and calling. And finally, one of the ladies at Hand Steel said, Julian has left the country. He went home to England. Just picked up his family, left.
Oh, no.
So he said, the bank is coming in on Wednesday and locking the doors, and the whole thing's going to bankruptcy courts. So I called Mass Archives, and I called Mass Historical Society and said, whatever work you've got there, do you know that this is going on? They had no idea. So they sent out their trucks to pick up the inventory. And but he also sold an Audubon plate to a collector in Florida for like $80,000.
Whoa.
And I got it. I was doing that job for him out of an estate in New York as a bunch of restrikes that they were trying to raise money for this foundation that had some of their plates. So I did get a lawyer on that one just to protect myself because I didn't know who owned a plate at that time.
Oh gosh.
He sold it for $75,000. So that these 2 people just competing, like, that's my plate. I just paid for that. Anyway, I think they finally got Julian back in the country. I don't know what happened to him.
Oh no.
Crazy.
Yeah. It's such a bizarre world full of people who are not ill intent. I mean, it's just the market part of it's so hard. I feel like artists should be free to create because they want to create, not because they need to sell something,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Not a perfect world.
No, it isn't. Oh gosh.
All right. Well, it's hard work, but I enjoy it.
Great stories, Bob. My God. That's great. Oh, well, thank you again. I appreciate you doing this, and I hope we can stay in touch. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you. It's been great. Well, if you've made it this far, congratulations. You've sat through a super technical one on printing etchings mostly, wiping the plates, etc. As you could tell, I find it fascinating. I'd like to thank Bob for coming on the pod. It was a pleasure to talk to him, and I really appreciate him doing it. So thank you, Bob. Also, a thank you, as usual, to my team, Dan Fury of Extension Audio for being my sound guy. Thanks, Dan. And a thank you to Michael Diamond for the use of his original music. And one to Skip Barnhart and Lee Turner, who sent me sounds from their studios that make up the intro and outro of each episode. As you know, if you've been following along, and I know you have been, you know that the images are over at platemarkpodcast.com. Also over there's a bunch of other stuff you can do. You can leave me a message, tell me who you want me to talk to. You can leave a review for the pod, which helps people find us. And also you can hit the support and donate button and help me keep the lights on. I think that's it for this week. We'll see you next time.